Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna start a new book series. Well, partially. Last week we talked about Percy Jackson. This week we're talking about Heroes of Olympus, which is kind of a continuation of the Percy Jackson series, but with a whole bunch of new characters and a new storyline and everything. But we're still seeing like our old friends like Percy and Annabeth and Grover and all of these characters that we've already grown to love, but we're also getting to know new ones. This series follows 7 demigods instead of just the one, and it's multiple point of views, which is honestly a nice twist and addition to the original. We're following them on a quest to Greece, to save the world from the goddess Gaia or Gia. One of the two. Don't ask me, I don't know how to pronounce it. But basically, she is the embodiment of Earth, and they're trying to stop her from destroying herself. More so the Greek side, and I guess the Roman side, because this series doesn't just focus on the Greek mythology, it also focuses on Roman, which again is another like giant twist that I honestly loved when I read the first book. Speaking of the first book, so let's get right into it. The first book is called The Lost Hero, and if you were like me and you knew this series was just a continuation of the Percy Jackson series and you started reading it, you were definitely lost in the beginning, because all of a sudden we're meeting these new characters who we have no connection to, who we have no idea who they are, and their names are Jason, Piper, and Leo. But we come to find out that Jason is actually a Roman Roman demigod, there we go, and a son of Jupiter, which in Greek terms is the son of Zeus, which basically he's overpowered for no reason. But we go on this journey with them, and we're like, okay, what does this have to do with Percy Jackson? And I mean, let's be honest, Percy's name is dropped within the first 2 chapters because Rick knew that people were just going to put this down if they didn't think that Percy was in it at all. But Annabeth's in it, which is great. We love Annabeth, and some other characters from the original series, like we see Rachel, Elizabeth there, Chiron, I think there's some more, but I can't think of it on top of my head. But it's just like, it's a great journey that they go on to rescue Hera, which you know how I feel about Hera. I do not like her. But I think it's a great addition and start to the series. It's definitely not as good as The Lightning Thief, as considering like to start off a series, but it's pretty good. I liked it. And then we move on to The Son of Neptune. Look at how clean this book looks compared to my other one. We're not gonna talk about that one. We put her in our backpack and she got destroyed. But Son of Neptune, right off the bat, we meet Mr. Percy Jackson again. And as we know, we love Percy. He's great, and honestly, this journey is cold. Like, it is such a great book. Like, looking at from outside point of view, I think, like, honestly, I think it's better than Sea of Monsters when it comes to, like, follow-up book, but that's just because it's Percy, and I love Percy. And honestly, the new people we meet in this book, because this one is based in the Roman camp, while the first one was based in Camp Half-Blood, because Hera likes to just do things, she switched Jason and Percy. Percy's the leader of Camp Half-Blood in a sense, and Jason was one of the leaders at Camp Jupiter, which is the Roman camp. And so she puts Percy in this Roman camp, and he basically, within like 3 days, becomes a leader, because he's just that good. And yet again, we start seeing Percy become even more overpowered as he gets older, and he becomes more in tune with his powers and his abilities, which is honestly great. But we can't forget about Hazel and Frank. Those 2 characters, they kind of like fall away after this book, which is really sad, but them in this book is so funny. Like, Frank, he's great. We love him. Hazel, too. Like, their stories together is just like, it's a great background. And the stories themselves, like, in the addition to what's already happening, like, the craziness that's already happening, is honestly insane. Because, like, Hazel's supposed to be dead. Girl died in 1941, and she's 13. She's alive. Which is its own shock within itself. And, like, honestly, it's great. And I like the parallels between the Son of Neptune and the Lost Hero, because both Percy and Jason have lost their memories and they have no idea what's going on. But eventually they do end up remembering them. But at the end of the day, it's just like, you see the differences, how they handled it. Like, Jason was freaking out and whatever, and Percy's just like, this is just another Tuesday for me. Like, he obviously knew what he was doing. Like, he had no issue. But then we move on to Mark of Athena, this is where Miss Annabeth Chase comes back into it, because she's really the main character of this book. And she finds Percy again, which she was losing her crap in The Lost Hero, because she was like, where is my boyfriend? Where is he? Why is he missing? And at this point, Percy has been missing for like 6 months. But they know he's at the Roman camp. They just have to they had to make a ship to get to the Roman camp, because they know that once they get to the Roman camp, they're going to have to go somewhere else. Which is basically what happens. And then Leo, who we meet in the first book, son of Hephaestus, ends up making a mistake and blowing up Camp Jupiter. It wasn't his fault. Something possessed him. So, that was a thing. And he basically set the two camps to war, which was a whole other thing. But, honestly, we're starting to see the dynamic of the group come together, and how the Romans and the Greeks handle themselves differently, and how they hold themselves differently. But we're also starting to see, like, the drama of the gods, because in this we learn that because the two camps have come together, like, we learned about why they were separate, because when they come together, the gods can't choose between which versions of themselves they are, like, if they're in their Roman selves or if they're in their Greek selves. Like, Athena, she can either be Venus or she can be Athena. And Annabeth is starting to realize that, like, the only way to fix this is to find the thing find the thing that the Romans stole from the Greeks, and it was a big issue back when it happened. And it's this quest that only a child of Athena can handle, and a bunch of children of Athena have tried and failed. But Miss Annabeth Chase, the icon she is, goes and does it single-handedly. Period. Queen. We also face in this story an issue with Nico. And if you don't remember who Nico is, he is the son of Hades, and he is the half-brother of Hazel. Because Hazel is the daughter of Pluto, and they are sort of siblings, but sort of not. But they see each other as siblings, so that's just what we're going to go with. He gets captured by the giants, which are the big bads, basically the titans of this series. And so they have to go and save him, while they're also facing a bunch of other issues, especially within themselves. Like, they fight with each other so often. It's kind of crazy. Like, Percy and Jason especially, because they're both known for, like, leadership roles, but then they're, like, having to fight each other for that leadership role. But then they just give up and give it to Annabeth, because it's Annabeth Chase. Who isn't going to give up to Annabeth Chase? Mr. Rick Riordan just loves his cliffhangers. He sends Percy and Annabeth over a cliff in Tartarus. And if you don't know what Tartarus is, it is basically a hell beneath hell, is how it is described. Well, the hell beneath the underworld. And it's like where the monsters go and where the titans go. Like, basically all of the bad people get sent to Tartarus, and especially within the Greek world, to reconvene and, like, regenerate, basically. And they just last, like, 3 pages of the book, they fall. And there's nothing, like, not even that. It's the last, like, 3 sentences of the book. They fall into this pit after Annabeth saved the statue of the Athenan Parthenos, which is a giant statue of Athena that's supposed to save the camps. At least that's what she was told by her mother. And her reward is falling into Tartarus. And that brings us to the House of Hades. Oh my god, this book is so good. a lot of people I've seen don't like it because really they feel like the only thing that's really happening is Percy and Annabeth in Tartarus, but like the other demigods go through a lot of crap too. Like a lot of crap too. Like it's just great. But just because of the book series, like they switch between POVs. Like I think it's every 2 or 3 chapters. It's just it's so good. Like it's another level of book, and I can't, it's hard to talk about it because of how good it is. So Percy and Annabeth, they're in Tartarus. That's basically the main thing, and they have to get through Tartarus to reach the Doors of Death, which is basically what is keeping the monsters from degenerating, basically. Because when you hit a monster with a gold or bronze sword, they die and they turn into dust, and then they go to Tartarus to regenerate and become whole again. But because the Doors of Death have been held open by Gia's forces, it's not really happening. And it's a whole issue. It's been a whole issue for them through the rest of the books. So but the Doors of Death have to be closed on both sides. And to do so, they needed someone in Tartarus because that's how it is. And it just happened to be Percy and Annabeth. And so they fell into Tartarus in the first book, or not in the first book, in the Mark of Athena. And they spend this whole book getting through Tartarus and trying to find the Doors of Death, which is a whole other thing because they're constantly trying to be killed all the time. And on the other side, Nico is leading the other 5 demigods through Rome and Greece to get to where the Doors of Death are being held open in the mortal world, basically. Which, that journey itself is a great one, but it really is overshadowed by Percy and Annabeth's journey, because alone, we find that Percy has been holding back. This entire time he's been holding... My man chokes out a goddess with her own tears. That's terrifying. And he didn't even, like... he did it with his powers. Like, he just found out, oh, right, I can actually control all liquids, because all liquids have water in them in some way. And, yeah, it was genuinely terrifying to read that the first time. I was like, so you've been telling me that bro could have been boiling people alive and he just hasn't? Props to Rick for not traumatizing children. But, I mean, he did it in this book anyways. But basically, it's everyone's fighting for their life, and they're all struggling. It's just a struggle bus for all of them. But there's also a bunch of, like, depth and emotion that comes out in this book. Like, specifically with Nico and Jason, like, we get to see their friendship, and we see Piper become more, like, she finds herself, really. Like, she finds her true power and, like, her ability with her charm speak and all of that. And we see Leo go on his own self-journey. We see Frank and Hazel go on their own. Like, Frank gets the gift of Mars in this book, which basically just means he gets all buff and big because he's not a weak fighter that everyone thinks he is. He's actually really good. And he also becomes a praetor, which is the equivalent of leader of the Roman camp. And it's honestly just, it's a great book. And it's personally my favorite. Then that banger is followed up by this banger. While this is not the best in the series, it's not the worst. It is a great conclusion to the story. It is not as good as The Last Olympian in the original Percy Jackson series, but it is still really, really good. The Blood of Olympus is basically just the closing of the journey. They find their way to Athens, Greece, and they have to fight all of the Titans in order to make sure that their parents don't die, and their parents come and help because, I should have probably mentioned this book 1, giants can't be killed by just demigods. They have to be killed by demigods and gods coming together to kill them. And so we see the Olympians come out in both forms in their Roman and their Greek forms to fight with their children, and you just see them go ham on each other. But at the same time, we also have a subplot of Reyna, Nico, and Coach Hedge, who is basically the adult on board of the ship from the third book. Again, should have mentioned that earlier, but we got distracted by the pretty lights of Annabeth. And Reyna is mentioned, she comes up in this book because basically they are trying to find a way to get the Athena Parthenos back to Camp Half-Blood, which is where the Romans are preparing to fight a war, basically. And so in this book, Reyna comes and finds them at the end of this book when they all come out of the dungeon, basically, they're in, when they have to close the doors of death. And in this book, she left with Nico and Coach Hedge to go basically bring this giant marble statue across the world back to Camp Half-Blood. And they do make it, spoiler alert, they do make it. Glad they do. And it's just, that was a great, I like that story a lot. And then the original seven, they're still dealing with their own problems because Percy and Annabeth are traumatized, which, fair enough, they just went through literal hell. And then Percy is yet again having fights with Jason. Not as much as they were. They have become friends, all of them, because they've realized everything that they've been through, that they can't do it without each other. So I really liked that part, and they sort of come together as more of a family. But they get to the Athens, and they fight for their whatever. And the whole point of the book, the whole point at the end of the battle is, do not let yourselves bleed, because if 2 drops of blood fall on the ground, Gia will awake. It's basically what they're told. And lo and behold, Mr. Percy Jackson can't stop his nose bleeding, so I think it's Annabeth that gets stabbed to the point where she, falls over and bleeds on the ground, and then the second drops of demigod blood was Percy because his nose bled, which that was funny. That's how she came back to life. And so after they finish killing the giants, the gods send them back to Camp Half-Blood, which is where Gaia is going to basically kill everybody. And the whole, the rest of the family of the gods, basically leave them helpless. Because we learn, yet again, that the gods can't do anything. They can't do anything. So we send them back to Camp Half-Blood, where at the same point, Reyna and Nico and Coach Hedge just get back in time with the Athenian Parthenos. And so they 7 show up, and they're like, okay guys, instead of fighting each other, let's fight the army of monsters that surrounded us. And they go about that. But then Gia arrives. Of course she does, because why wouldn't she? She just happened to arrive. And basically, the prophecy comes true, and in order to save the camps, Leo sacrifices himself to blow Gia up in a ball of fire, and it was amazing. But if you really look into it, it was Leo, but it was also Octavian, who you meet in the second book, and you absolutely hate. We don't like Octavian, but he basically gets shot by a cannonball straight into Gia's face, because Nico just lets him. Nico's just like, womp womp, basically, which love him for that. But it's a great wrap-up, and at the end of the book, you just see the 2 camps really just come together and start listening to each other, and you just learn so much about seeing, the differences, but also seeing the similarities, and I think it was just a great addition to the series, and a great way to close that series up. But in the end, I just think it's a great series. Do I like it more than the original series? No. Do I still read it every time I finish the original series? Yes. And I could honestly read it by itself, because I like that series so much, but really you really just have to get past the first book. Which, it's not a bad book. I know people have said that. It's not a bad book, it's just you have to separate them, being Jason, Piper, and Leo, from Percy, Annabeth, and Grover, who we originally had and who we all love. We have to learn how to separate them, and once you do, you can really just love the series as a whole, separate from the original series, and I just think that not a lot of people are doing that. But both series faces their they both face their challenges, but they also have their growth, and like we see more representation in this new series, and I honestly really respect that, and I think Rick really did a great job with that. And I hope that the Percy Jackson series, like the TV show, gets to this point. Like I hope we get to see a Heroes of Olympus edition series, because that would be amazing, honestly. But yeah. In the end, the Heroes of Olympus series is more than just an adventure series. It's a story truly about like identity and friendship and just like overcoming fears and everything. Like the characters face huge challenges, both physical and emotional. Like going through the Tartarus alone was both physically challenging for Percy and Annabeth, yet entirely mentally challenging, because now no one's going to understand like what they've been through. And watching them grow from the series, honestly, is quite inspiring, especially like Piper and Hazel, how they were just like not overlooked, well, kind of. They were overlooked female characters because they were being compared to Annabeth, but then in the fourth book, they find themselves and they come together in a way that they really show the audience like what they're capable of, and I think that's just really beautiful. And it's just like it's great, and like the House of Hades in particular will always be a special place in my heart, because just the way it emphasizes so many different things, and it's just like it digs into each character and the importance of like where their loyalties lie and how they need to come together to like really just to come together, because this is the process for this. If they didn't go through everything that they went through in this book, and they didn't find themselves, and they didn't like really become friends in that book, they would not have been able to save everyone in this book. And I think that is just a really beautiful thing. Like even when everything was just, they were lost and they had no idea what was going on, they still found a way to find each other, and I think that was just a beautiful message that Rick wrote. And honestly, you can't go wrong with it. But at the end of the day, if you haven't read this series, I highly recommend. Like it's a great series. You can read it either as a standalone, but I recommend reading the first series first, because that original Percy Jackson series is just so good. But you can read it as a standalone. You will be confused, but you could read it as a standalone. Let me know what you think of the series down in the comments if you have read it. Let me know what your favorite book is. And thanks for watching. Don't forget to slay your days aways. Slay your days aways. That's literally the exact same thing that I just said. Slay your day away. There you go. Kings and queens. I'm sorry. Excuse me. It has been a rough week. But yeah. Thanks for coming to watch this video. And if you want more like it, come back. I don't know. You have free will. Do what you want. But thanks for watching. Have a great day.